Chapter 1. The Eighth Awakening. The carriage wheel snapped on the mountain pass just as dusk bled into the horizon. Ilara pressed her palm against the splintered wood, her breath forming pale clouds in the October air. The driver had fled an hour ago, abandoned her without explanation, his eyes wild with something between terror and reverence. Now she stood alone on a road that wound through ancient pines, their branches black as iron against the dying light. She shouldn't have come to Varenholt. The border village elders had warned her, their weathered faces tight with secrets they refused to speak aloud. But her patience in the valley needed the rare medicinal moss that grew only in these mountains, and Ilara had never been one to heed superstition over suffering. The wind carried the scent of snow, and something older, stone dust perhaps, or the breath of caves unseen. She gathered her medical bag and started walking. The road curved sharply ahead, disappearing into shadow. Behind her, the last thread of sunlight snapped, and the mountain exhaled darkness. That was when she heard the footsteps. Not the crunch of boots on gravel, but something lighter, deliberate. A predator's gait. Ilara turned slowly, her heart a hammer against her ribs. 3 figures emerged from the tree line, pale as moonlight, their movements fluid and wrong. The woman in front smiled, revealing teeth too sharp, too many. Lost, little healer? Her voice was silk over broken glass. "I'm traveling to the monastery," Ilara said, keeping her tone steady even as her fingers found the silver scalpel in her bag. "I have no quarrel with anyone." The woman laughed, a sound like wind through dead leaves. "No quarrel, only hunger." She tilted her head, studying Ilara with eyes that reflected no light. "Your blood sings of something we haven't tasted in centuries. Not quite mortal. Not quite." She inhaled deeply. "Ah, the king will be furious we found you first." "King?" The other 2 moved to flank her, cutting off escape. Ilara's pulse roared in her ears. She had treated soldiers, plague victims, men torn by machinery. But this was different. This was a nightmare given flesh. "Run," the woman whispered, her grin widening. "Make it interesting." Ilara ran. Her boots skidded on loose stones as she plunged down the road, the medical bag slapping against her hip. Behind her, laughter echoed. Not receding, but playing with her, letting her believe she had a chance. The road opened suddenly into a clearing, dominated by a bridge of crumbling stone. Beyond it, perched on a cliff like a crown of thorns, stood a castle. Its towers clawed at the sky, windows dark as empty eye sockets. Ilara's foot hit the bridge, and the world erupted in shadow. Something struck the woman mid-leap, sending her tumbling across the stones with an inhuman shriek. The other 2 attackers froze, their confidence dissolving into something that looked terrifyingly like fear. A figure stood between Ilara and her hunters, draped in a cloak that moved like living smoke. He was tall, impossibly still, and when he turned his head slightly, Ilara glimpsed a profile carved from marble and moonlight. "Leave." His voice was low, absolute, not a command but a fundamental law of nature. The woman scrambled backward, blood, too dark, too thick, seeping from a gash across her shoulder. "My Lord Kane," she gasped. "We didn't know—" "You knew." The figure, Kane, didn't raise his voice, but the temperature plummeted. Frost spread across the bridge stones in delicate, lethal patterns. "You smelled her bloodline and thought to claim what is not yours. Leave now, or I will remind you why my mercy is more feared than my wrath." The 3 figures vanished into the forest like smoke. Silence settled, broken only by Ilara's ragged breathing. Kane turned fully toward her, and she understood why the driver had fled. He was beautiful in the way disasters are beautiful. Avalanches, wildfires, the moment before a storm breaks. His face held the severe elegance of old-world aristocracy, but his eyes were ancient, the color of winter storms. Dark hair fell past his shoulders, and when he moved, it was with the grace of something that had forgotten what it meant to be human. "You're bleeding." His gaze dropped to her hand, where the scalpel had cut her palm during the chase. Alara pressed, her thumb against the wound, suddenly aware of how vulnerable she was. "Are you going to kill me too?" Something flickered across his face. Pain, perhaps, or memory. "No," he said softly. "I've been waiting 7 lifetimes to save you." The words made no sense, but they landed in her chest like recognition. "Come." He extended a hand, palm up, offering rather than demanding. "The night holds worse things than my exiled kin. The castle offers sanctuary." "And if I refuse?" His lips curved into something that might have been a smile centuries ago. "Then I will watch you die on this bridge as I have watched you die 7 times before, and I will wait through another lifetime to try again." The wind howled, carrying the distant sound of wolves, or things that had once been wolves. Alara looked at his outstretched hand, at the castle looming behind him like a monument to forgotten oaths. She took his hand. His skin was cold as marble, but his grip was careful, reverent. He pulled her gently across the bridge, and with each step, Alara felt the world she knew falling away like old skin. "What did you mean?" she whispered. 7 lifetimes. Cain didn't answer, but as they passed beneath the castle's iron gates, he murmured words too soft for mortal ears. "You promised you would find me, and I have kept vigil through your every return." Chapter 2. The Memory in Stone. The castle interior breathed with centuries. Alara followed Cain through corridors lined with portraits whose eyes seemed to follow their passage. Candelabras burst to flame as they approached, then dimmed in their wake. No servants, no visible mechanism. Just his presence commanding the darkness to yield. "You're a vampire." The word felt absurd on her tongue. A fairy tale made flesh. "Yes." No hesitation, no apology. Though that term carries centuries of misunderstanding. He led her into a chamber dominated by a fireplace tall enough to stand in. The flames roared to life without kindling, casting golden light across furniture that belonged in a museum. Carved mahogany, silk cushions the color of dried blood, a desk covered in maps from empires that no longer existed. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a settee near the fire. "Your hand requires attention." Alara clutched her medical bag defensively. "I can treat myself." "I know. You've always been remarkably self-sufficient." He moved to a cabinet, retrieving supplies, clean linen, salve that smelled of honey, and something sharper. "In your 3rd life, you were a battlefield surgeon. In your 5th, an apothecary who developed remedies still used today, though credited to others." Her breath caught. "You're insane." "Perhaps." He knelt before her, a king bowing to a peasant, and carefully took her injured hand. His touch remained gentle, clinical. But insanity would be easier than the truth. Alara watched, transfixed, as he cleaned the wound with practiced efficiency. His fingers moved with the precision of someone who had studied anatomy for longer than she'd been alive. "If what you say is true, if I've lived before, why don't I remember?" Mortality is forgetful. Each rebirth scours the soul clean. He wrapped the linen with methodical care. But traces remain. Dreams. Déjà vu. The inexplicable certainty that you've known someone before. She thought of the pull she'd felt when she took his hand on the bridge. Recognition without memory. "Tell me," she demanded. "Tell me who I was." Cain secured the bandage and remained kneeling, his storm-gray eyes meeting hers with naked vulnerability. "Your 1st life you were called Isadora. 700 years ago, in a kingdom long since dust. a healer's daughter who showed me that monsters could still choose mercy. His voice softened to something dangerously close to warmth. You were 8 years old when we met. I was hunting in the forest, and you found me wounded. Silver arrow through the shoulder. You should have run. Instead, you said, "You're hurt. I know how to help." Ilara's throat tightened. She could almost see it, a child with fearless compassion approaching a creature of nightmare. I tried to frighten you away. You informed me that your mother treated everyone, even grumpy strangers. So I let you bandage me with strips torn from your apron, and you chattered about herbs and poultices while I remembered what it meant to be seen as something other than a curse. The fire crackled, sending shadows dancing across his face. We became unlikely companions. You would visit me in these woods, bringing questions about the world and stories from the village. I taught you to read Latin, to identify stars, to question superstition. And when plague came to your village, I used my resources to bring physicians, to protect your family. His expression darkened. But humans age, and vampires do not. By the time you were 20, the villagers whispered that I had enchanted you. When you fell ill, poisoned, though I couldn't prove it, you died in my arms. Your last words were, "I'll find you again, in every lifetime. Wait for me." Tears blurred Ilara's vision without permission. That's just a story. I have waited 7 centuries for you to remember it. He stood, moving to the fireplace, his back rigid with restrained emotion. You returned 60 years later as Magdalene, a nun who smuggled heretics to safety. We had 3 years before the Inquisition burned you at the stake. Then Vivian, an artist in Renaissance Florence, murdered by a rival who envied your commissions. Catherine, a scholar in Prague, died of consumption. Ophelia drowned. Serafina, executed for witchcraft. Isolde, killed in the crossfire of a war that wasn't hers. Each name landed like a blow. And now, he turned back to her. You are Ilara. I have watched you from the shadows since your birth, ensuring no harm befalls you before you find your way here. Because each time you come to these mountains, each time you seek something, knowledge, healing, purpose. Each time your soul remembers what your mind has forgotten. Ilara rose unsteadily, her hand throbbing in rhythm with her racing heart. Why would fate do this? Not fate, his jaw tightened. A curse. One I brought upon us both through arrogance and love. What kind of curse? Kane moved to the window, staring out at the moonlit peaks. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. The kind that condemns you to mortal death, lifetime after lifetime, while I remain immortal. The kind that erases your memory with each rebirth while mine grows heavier. The kind that offers me one chance per lifetime to break it, if you choose to stay freely, knowing what I am. Knowing what it would cost. And if I leave. His reflection in the glass looked carved from grief. Then I wait for the 9th life, and the 10th, until the stars burn out or the curse releases us both into oblivion. Outside something howled. Not wolf, not quite human. Kane's expression sharpened. Rest tonight. Tomorrow I'll explain the danger that hunts us both. For now, you're safe within these walls. Am I your prisoner? He turned, and for a moment, she glimpsed the monster beneath the gentleman's mask. Power barely leashed, loneliness like a physical wound. You are my guest, my torment, and my only hope. He moved toward the door. Sleep, Ilara. Dream. And perhaps you'll remember why you promised to find me. He vanished into the corridor, leaving her alone with firelight and impossible truths. Ilara touched the bandage on her hand, still warm from his careful ministrations. 7 lifetimes, 7 deaths. And somewhere in her soul, buried beneath reason and fear, a small voice whispered, I remember his eyes. Chapter 3. Blood and Oaths. Dawn never truly reached the castle. Ilara woke in a 4-poster bed draped with curtains the color of twilight. The room arranged with feminine touches, lavender sachets, a water basin filled with rose petals, clothing laid out in her size. Too convenient, too prepared. He's been waiting. She dressed in the provided garments, a gown of deep burgundy wool, practical but fine, with silver clasps shaped like crescent moons. Her medical bag sat on the vanity, contents undisturbed. Trust or test, she couldn't discern which. The corridors beyond her chamber formed a labyrinth of stone and shadow. She followed the scent of bread and herbs, finding herself in a kitchen where morning light struggled through narrow windows. A simple breakfast waited on the oak table, fresh bread, cheese, apples, tea still steaming, no servant in sight. Alara ate slowly, studying her surroundings. Despite the castle's Gothic architecture, the kitchen felt lived in, functional. Dried herbs hung from ceiling beams, some she recognized, others unfamiliar. A mortar and pestle sat beside the hearth, stained with recent use. "I thought you might prefer to eat without an undead host hovering." Kane's voice emerged from the shadowed doorway. She didn't startle this time. "Do you need food?" "No, but I remember what it tasted like. Memory is curse and comfort in equal measure." He moved into the light with obvious discomfort, though his skin showed no signs of burning. "The sun weakens me but doesn't destroy." Another myth embellished through fear. "And silver? Garlic crosses?" A ghost of amusement touched his lips. "Silver burns like acid. Garlic is merely unpleasant. As for holy symbols..." He lifted his hand, showing a signet ring bearing a cross. "Faith harms me only if wielded with genuine belief, and those who possess such faith rarely resort to violence." Alara sipped her tea, using the moment to study him properly. In daylight, however muted, he looked even less human. His beauty held no warmth, his stillness too perfect. Everything about him whispered other. "You said a curse binds us. Tell me how." Kane settled into the chair opposite, his movements precise. "When Isadora died in my arms, I was new to immortality, arrogant. I believed my power could cheat death itself." His expression darkened. "So I made a bargain with something older than vampires, an entity that feeds on despair and devotion. I offered anything, my soul, my eternity, to bring her back. And it worked? In the cruelest way imaginable. The entity granted your soul reincarnation, yes, but mortal reincarnation, always ending in untimely death. And it bound our fates together. Each lifetime, you're drawn to these mountains. Each lifetime, I'm given one chance to offer you immortality freely chosen. If you accept, the curse breaks. If you refuse or die before choosing," he looked away. "The cycle continues." Alara set down her cup with deliberate care. "So I'm bait for an impossible decision. You're a woman with agency in an unfair circumstance." His tone sharpened. "I will not manipulate you into accepting. Each lifetime I've explained the truth. Each lifetime you've chosen as you saw fit. And each time I've refused? No." The word hung heavy between them. 3 times you chose to stay. We had years together, decades once. But the curse has clauses written in blood. To become immortal like me, you must drink from my vein while I drain you to the edge of death, binding our essences. It requires absolute trust and surrender." His jaw tensed. "Each time you've begun the transformation, something interrupts. Hunters, rival covens, war. In your 5th life, you were murdered during the ritual itself. Your throat cut by zealots who breached my defenses. Horror crawled up Alara's spine. You've watched me die 7 times. 8, if you count Isadora." His eyes met hers, and she saw the ocean of grief he carried. "So forgive me if I seem cautious. If I seem afraid, because I am. Of hope, of failure, of watching you slip away again." The vulnerability in his admission stole her breath. "Those vampires on the bridge," she said slowly. "They mentioned a king." "Is that you?" "Once. I ruled the northern covens for 3 centuries, maintaining balance between our kind and humanity. But after Isadora, I abdicated. This castle is my exile and my vigil." He stood, moving to the window. "But power doesn't forget. There are those who would use you against me, to force my return, to leverage my influence, or simply to prove I can still bleed. Why do they fear you?" He turned, and for an instant, she glimpsed something primordial in his gaze, a predator that had forgotten nothing, forgiven nothing. "Because I am old enough to remember when we were gods, and cruel enough to make the modern world remember too." A chill raced through her. This was the monster, barely leashed by will and loneliness. Last night's attackers were scouts, Kane continued, his voice returning to controlled calm. House Corvus has been circling for months, testing my defenses. Your arrival accelerates their timeline. They'll come again in force. Then I should leave. Lead them away from you. They've already caught your scent. Leaving makes you easier prey. He moved closer, not threatening but urgent. Your blood carries something rare, a genetic marker that appears once every few generations. To me, it's proof of your reincarnated soul. To them, it's an aphrodisiac, a delicacy, and a power source. Alara's hand moved unconsciously to her throat. What do you suggest? Stay. Learn to defend yourself. Let me teach you what you've forgotten. His expression softened infinitesimally. And if at the end of this lifetime you choose to walk away as mortal, I will escort you to safety and wait for the 9th cycle. But give yourself the chance to remember. She should refuse. Should run back to her village, to her patients, to the ordinary existence she understood. But something in her marrow knew him. Recognized the weight of his devotion. One condition, she said. No lies, no manipulation. If I'm to make an impossible choice, I make it with open eyes. Kane inclined his head, a gesture that looked more like a knight acknowledging his queen. You have my oath. He extended his hand across the table. Palm up. Alara hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. His fingers closed gently around hers, and she felt it. A pulse of connection deeper than blood, older than memory. A promise kept across centuries. Outside, thunder rumbled despite the clear sky. The curse was listening. Chapter 4. Lessons in Shadow. Training began at dusk in the castle's forgotten ballroom. Moonlight spilled through shattered windows, illuminating a space where dust motes danced like ghosts. The floor, once polished marble, now bore the scars of time and violence, cracks that spiderwebbed across faded elegance. Kane waited in the center, having shed his coat. In shirt sleeves and leather breeches, he looked like a duelist from another age. Your body remembers nothing, he said. But instinct lies deeper than conscious thought. We'll start there. Alara approached cautiously, still dressed in the burgundy gown. I'm a healer, not a warrior. You've been both. He circled her slowly, assessing. In your 4th life, Catherine, you studied anatomy to such depth that you could incapacitate an attacker with precise strikes. In your 6th, Seraphina, you learned herb lore potent enough to slow even vampire reflexes. You're saying I've forgotten how to fight. I'm saying your soul knows how to survive. He stopped in front of her. Lesson 1, awareness. Close your eyes. She obeyed, feeling foolish and hyper-aware of his proximity. Listen beyond hearing. Scent the air. Feel the temperature shift. His voice moved. Left, then right, circling. Vampires manipulate space differently. We fold through shadows. If you rely on sight alone, we'll kill you before you register the attack. Alara focused, filtering through sensory input. There, a displacement of air behind her, the scent of cold stone intensifying. She spun, hand raised defensively. Her palm met his chest. He'd stopped just short of touching her, his expression approving. Good. Again. They trained until sweat dampened her hairline, until her muscles learned patterns her mind had forgotten. He taught her to recognize the preternatural stillness that preceded a vampire's strike, the subtle scent of blood and age that clung to their kind. Why don't you smell like death? She asked during a water break, the question escaping before propriety could cage it. Kane paused mid-motion, something vulnerable flickering across his face. I feed carefully. Consent only, and never to the point of harm. It's penance, perhaps, or the last thread of the man I was before immortality. Do you feed often? Once a month if I'm disciplined. His gaze dropped. Your blood, though, even in proximity, calls to something deeper. The curse ensures I'm always aware of you, always tempted. It's exquisite torture. The admission hung between them, raw and dangerous. Have you ever... She couldn't finish the question. Fed from you? His expression shuddered. Once. In your 3rd life, when you lay dying from battlefield wounds. You offered, knowing it would ease your pain and give me strength to carry you to safety. I took 3 drops. It nearly destroyed my sanity. His hands clenched. Your blood is ambrosia and agony. It offers me a glimpse of warmth I lost centuries ago, and reminds me exactly what I can never truly have. Alara's throat tightened. She stepped closer, drawn by an instinct she didn't understand. What does it taste like? Like spring after eternal winter. His voice roughened. Like memory given form, like hope. Their faces were inches apart now, her pulse a hummingbird rhythm. She could see details invisible in shadow. The faint silver scars on his neck, the way his pupils dilated when she exhaled. I should fear you, she whispered. You should. I'm a predator wearing the mask of civility. But he didn't move, didn't close the distance. Yet every lifetime, you see past the monster to something I've nearly forgotten, the man who once believed in goodness. Alara raised her hand slowly, giving him time to retreat. When he remained frozen, she touched his cheek with tentative fingers. His skin was cool marble, but beneath it, she felt tension. Centuries of restraint holding back an ocean of need. Tell me, she breathed, what happened to Isadora? The truth, not the tragedy. Kane's eyes closed, and for a moment he looked mortal in his anguish. She was poisoned by the village priest's daughter, a girl who fancied herself in love with me and couldn't bear my attention to Isadora. By the time I found her, the toxin had ravaged her body. I held her through 3 days of agony, using what power I had to ease her pain, but unable to heal what had already destroyed her organs. His voice cracked. She made me promise not to hunt the killer. Said vengeance would make me the monster the village believed I was. So I held her hand, and I watched her light go out, and I made a choice that has damned us both. A tear escaped down his cheek. Silver, not salt. Vampire grief given form. Alara caught it on her fingertip, studying the liquid moonlight. You loved her. I love you. The correction was gentle but absolute. Across every lifetime, every name, every face, it's always been you. The soul I recognize even when you don't remember me. The weight of that devotion should have frightened her. Instead, it settled around her shoulders like a cloak she'd forgotten she owned. I need time, she said softly, to understand this. To know if what I feel is memory or manipulation. A howl shattered the moment. Kane's head snapped toward the window, his entire demeanor transforming into predatory alertness. They're early. Corvus doesn't waste time. How many? Too many. He gripped her shoulders. Listen carefully. There's a passage behind the hearth in your chamber. Follow it down to the catacombs. Wait there until— No. Alara pulled away. You said I've been a fighter before. Let me fight now. You're not ready? Then we die together. She met his gaze with steel. I won't hide while you face them alone. Not this lifetime. Something fierce and proud blazed in his expression, stubborn in every incarnation. Glass exploded inward as shapes crashed through the windows. 6, 7, too many to count. House Corvus had sent an execution squad. Kane moved like liquid darkness, intercepting the first attacker with inhuman speed. Bodies collided, supernatural strength meeting supernatural fury. Alara grabbed a broken chair leg, the wood stake shaped by accident or fate. Her heart hammered, but her hands remained steady. A female vampire lunged from the shadows, fangs bared. Alara sidestepped, muscle memory from lives she couldn't recall, and drove the stake upward into the attacker's shoulder. Not the heart, but enough to make her scream and stumble back. Clever little mortal, the vampire hissed. The king teaches you well. He teaches me to survive you. Alara circled, keeping her back to Kane's position. The battle raged around them. Savage, beautiful, terrible. Kane fought with the grace of centuries and the desperation of a man with everything to lose. And Alara, for the first time in this lifetime, felt her soul wake up. Chapter 5. The Echo of Oaths. Blood painted the marble floor in silver and crimson. Alara pressed her back against Kane's, her improvised stake slick with vampire ichor. 4 attackers lay motionless, not dead, but incapacitated enough to retreat. 3 more circled with calculated wariness, reassessing the threat. "We interrupt your courtship with apologies," the lead vampire drawled, his voice cultured poison. He was beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful. Sharp, cold, purposeful. "But Lord Theron of House Corvus requests an audience. With both of you." Kane's chest heaved against Alara's spine, his breath unnecessary but taken from habit. "Tell Theron that my exile stands. He has no authority here." But the council has reconvened. Your absence has been noted. Problematic, even." The vampire smiled, revealing teeth too white. "And your mortal pet's bloodline has attracted attention beyond our house. Hunters, seers, even the crone of the East. They all want to know, is the Endless King's heart truly vulnerable after 7 centuries? Leave, now." Kane's voice dropped to subterranean darkness. "Or I remind you why I ruled." The air temperature plummeted. Ice crackled across broken glass, and the shadows themselves seemed to lean toward Kane, awaiting command. This was power beyond strength. This was dominion over natural law, an ancient thing remembering its authority. The vampires hesitated. "Even arrogance has limits." 3 days, the leader said, retreating toward the window. "The council meets in 3 days at the Veilstone Cathedral. Attend, or we extract you both by force. The mortal's blood will be tested either way." He vanished through the shattered window, his companions flowing after him like smoke. Silence crashed down, broken only by Alara's ragged breathing. Kane turned to her immediately, hands hovering near her shoulders, scanning for injury. "Are you hurt?" "Did any of them—" "I'm fine." She was shaking now, adrenaline fracturing into tremors. What did he mean, my blood will be tested? Kane's jaw tightened. There's a ritual, ancient magic that can trace a soul's lineage across lifetimes. If they confirm you're Isadora reborn, he looked away, they'll use you as leverage, to force my return to the council, to manipulate my votes, to ensure I serve their political games. And if I'm not? If this is all coincidence? Then they'll drain you dry and discard you, because a rare bloodline without reincarnated souls is still valuable as currency. His voice roughened with barely controlled rage. I won't let either scenario unfold. Alara reached up, stilling his frantic assessment with a hand against his chest. Beneath her palm, nothing beat, no heart, no warmth, just the memory of both. Then we go to this council. We face them together. You don't understand what you're suggesting. The council is filled with creatures who've forgotten mercy. They'll tear you apart with words before they even consider violence. And yet you survived them for centuries. I'm not the one with everything to lose. His hands finally settled on her shoulders, grip gentle despite the desperation in his eyes. Alara, I have died 1,000 small deaths watching you slip away. I cannot, will not, walk you into another execution. She studied his face, seeing past the predatory beauty to the man beneath, the one who'd held a dying child's hand and promised to wait, the one who'd traded his soul for an impossible bargain, the one who'd endured 7 centuries of grief without becoming a monster. In every lifetime, she said softly, I've chosen you. Isn't that what you told me? Yes, but then trust me to choose again? Consciously this time. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the coldness radiating from him, close enough to witness the war in his expression. You keep trying to protect me from the truth, but what if facing it together is the only way to break this curse? Kane's composure cracked. He pulled her against him suddenly, fiercely, his arms iron bands that trembled with restraint. I can't lose you again. I'm not strong enough. Alara's breath caught. She felt his fingers tangled in her hair, his face buried against her neck where her pulse thundered. He wasn't feeding, wasn't even tempted. This was something rawer than hunger. This was a man crumbling under the weight of immortal devotion. 7 lifetimes, she whispered against his shoulder. And you've never given up. That's not weakness, Kane. That's the strongest thing I've ever heard. He shuddered against her, and she realized with shock that he was weeping. Silver tears dampening her collarbone. Centuries of suppressed grief finally finding release. They stood like that in the ruined ballroom, surrounded by destruction, while something fragile and essential reformed between them. Not the love of lifetimes past, but the beginning of something current. a choice made in full awareness rather than destiny's blind insistence. When Cain finally pulled back, his eyes were storm-wrecked but clearer. If we do this, if we face the council, you need to understand the cost. The ritual they'll demand isn't just about confirming your soul. It's a test of faith. You'll experience fragments of your past deaths. The fear, the pain, I know. She didn't know how she knew, but certainty settled in her bones. Some part of me remembers the endings. I dream them sometimes. Fire, water, blood. She met his gaze steadily. If reliving them is the price of freedom, I'll pay it. You've always been braver than I deserve. And you've always been more human than you believe. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. The first she'd seen that reached his eyes. We should prepare. The council won't make this easy. Tell me about them. Who leads? Who do we fear? They walked through moonlit corridors as he explained the power structure. Lady Marana, who'd ruled the Eastern Territories for a millennium. Lord Theron of House Corvus, ambitious and ruthless. The Crone of the East, an oracle whose prophecies shaped vampire politics. And others, each ancient, each dangerous. And you? Alara asked. Where did you fit in this hierarchy? I was the balance. The one who prevented total war between houses, who negotiated with human authorities, who remembered that we survive by coexistence, not conquest. He paused at her chamber door. But power breeds resentment. When I abdicated after Isadora, some saw weakness. Others saw opportunity. They want you back. They want me controlled. There's a difference. Alara stepped into her room, then turned back. Cain? Tonight, when you held me? Was that the first time? His expression softened into something almost bashful. In this lifetime, yes. In others, he looked away. In your third life, we had 43 years. I held you 10,000 times. It's never enough, and it's never the same. Each incarnation, you're the woman I remember, and someone entirely new. That must be exhausting. Loving someone who keeps changing. No. He met her gaze with absolute conviction. It's a privilege. To love you as Isadora, as Catherine, as Ophelia. Each time I discover new facets of the same soul. You are my constant in a world that forgets everything. The weight of that admission left her breathless. Get some rest, he said gently. Tomorrow I'll teach you what to expect from the council. And Alara? He hesitated. Thank you. For staying. For fighting. For being brave enough to remember. He disappeared into shadow before she could respond. Alara closed the door and leaned against it, her heart a confused tangle. She didn't love him. Not yet. Not with the certainty of past lives. But she felt the gravitational pull of something deeper than attraction. Older than this lifetime. As she prepared for bed, she noticed new details in the room. A hairbrush on the vanity that matched her preferences exactly. A book of poetry opened to a page marked with a pressed lavender sprig. A sketch on the desk showing a young woman's face, Isadora's face. Her face, 7 centuries ago. Alara studied the drawing, seeing familiarity in the curve of the cheek, the set of the eyes, not identical but undeniably echoed. She touched the pressed flower, and a memory flickered. Not hers, but inherited. A garden, laughter, strong cold hands steadying her as she climbed a tree. Careful little healer. Even I can't mend broken bones. You're immortal. You should learn to climb too. I'll learn anything you teach me. The memory dissolved, leaving her aching with nostalgia for a moment she'd never lived. Outside her window, the moon watched with ancient eyes. The curse was waiting, and Alara was finally ready to remember. Chapter 6. Blood Revelation. The council met in the ruins of what had once been a cathedral. Alara stood beside, Cain at the entrance, staring up at Gothic arches that clawed toward an indifferent sky. Moonlight poured through gaps where stained glass had shattered centuries ago, painting the stone floor in spectral colors. This was holy ground corrupted, a sanctuary claimed by creatures who'd outlived the god it honored. Stay close, Cain murmured. His hand rested on the small of her back, protective and possessive. Let me speak first. Answer only direct questions, and reveal nothing about our training. You think they'll try to break us? I know they will. It's what I would do. They entered together. The council sat arranged in a semicircle of throne-like chairs, salvaged from forgotten palaces. 7 vampires, each radiating power that made the air thick and difficult to breathe. Even without supernatural senses, Alara could feel their age, centuries compressed into stillness, watching her with the patient hunger of apex predators. Lady Mirana occupied the central seat. She was impossibly beautiful, her skin the color of moonlit snow, her hair a cascade of silver that defied gravity. When she smiled, it held the warmth of a glacier. "Lord Kane, how unexpected that you'd honor us with your presence." "I was given little choice, Mirana." Kane's tone remained neutral, but Alara felt his tension. "You sent Theron to threaten my guest." "Threaten?" Lord Theron lounged in the seat to Mirana's right, his posture deliberately casual. "We merely extended an invitation. That your pet caused injury to my scouts is regrettable but understandable. Mortals do startle so easily." The condescension was deliberate, meant to provoke. Alara kept her expression carefully blank, channeling years of treating difficult patients who thought healers were servants rather than professionals. "Let us dispense with pleasantries," Mirana said. "We requested this audience for 2 reasons. First, your exile has lasted 97 years, Lord Kane. The Council requires your expertise in negotiating with the new human authorities. Technology has complicated our discretion. I abdicated legally. Find another diplomat. None possess your particular gift for inspiring trust in mortals." Mirana's gaze flickered to Alara with calculated interest. "Which brings us to the second matter. This woman. Your records show an obsession spanning 7 centuries, tracking a bloodline through generations. Quite the romantic dedication. Or quite the delusion. My personal affairs are not council business. They are when your choices affect our security." This came from the crone, a wizened vampire whose eyes swirled with precognitive haze. "I have seen her, Lord Kane, in visions that fracture causality. She is pivot point and paradox. Her existence threatens to unravel or solidify our future." Alara's skin prickled. "I'm just a healer." "You are a soul fragment, repeating across time." The crone leaned forward, her ancient face cracking into something resembling fascination. "A human who promised to transcend death through sheer will and has succeeded 8 times. Do you know how rare that is? How valuable?" "She is not property to be valued," Kane said, his voice dropping to dangerous depths. "Everything is property to someone," Theron countered. "The question is, what will you trade to keep her safe?" There it was, the trap, sprung with surgical precision. Kane's hand tightened on Alara's back. "Name your price. Return to the council. Serve as high negotiator for the next century." Mirana's smile sharpened. "In exchange, we grant your mortal protection. No house may touch her. No ritual may be forced upon her. She lives and dies by natural means, and you both continue your melancholic dance across eternity." It was a generous offer. "Suspiciously generous, and if I refuse?" Kane asked. "Then we invoke the council's right of investigation. We test her bloodline, confirm her reincarnation, and determine if she poses a threat to our kind. The process is invasive. Many mortals don't survive the memory extraction, and those who do are rarely sane afterward." Alara's breath caught. She'd expected threats, but not this. Not a choice between Kane's freedom and her survival. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't sacrifice yourself again." He didn't look at her. "How long do I have to decide?" "Until moonset." Mirana gestured to the cathedral's broken windows. 3 hours. Decide quickly, Lord Kane. Your mortal looks fragile." Theron stood, stretching languidly. "We'll wait outside. Give you time to discuss." His gaze slid over Alara with predatory interest. "Though if I were you, mortal, I'd convince him to cooperate. The memory ritual is quite unpleasant. We excavate every death you've experienced, make you relive them in crystalline detail. Most subjects beg for mercy by the 3rd lifetime." They filed out, leaving Kane and Alara alone in the ruined cathedral. Silence expanded, oppressive and suffocating. "You're considering it," Alara said quietly, accepting their terms. "It keeps you safe. It enslaves you for a century." She moved to face him, forcing him to meet her eyes. "What happens when this lifetime ends? You'll still be bound to them, and I'll still be reborn without memory. The cycle continues, except now you're their prisoner too. Better a prisoner than watching you tortured. No. She gripped his arms. Listen to me. We break this. Tonight. We face the ritual together. You don't know what you're suggesting. I know that for 7 lifetimes you've tried to protect me by controlling the circumstances, and every time I've died anyway. Her voice softened. What if the only way forward is through? What if I need to remember every death to understand how to survive this one? Kane's resolve wavered. She saw it in the fracture lines spreading across his composure. The pain will be temporary, but your servitude would last a century. She stepped closer, close enough to feel his stillness like a held breath. Trust me. Trust that I'm stronger than you think. Trust that maybe this time I'm meant to remember everything. He searched her face, and she saw the moment he understood. This wasn't just about survival. This was about breaking the curse by facing it directly, by choosing the hard path over the safe one. If we do this, he said slowly, I stay with you through the ritual. I don't care what council law says. I won't leave you alone in those memories. Then we agree. She took his hand, feeling the marble coldness of his skin. We face this together. No more running. No more waiting for the next lifetime. Kane raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that felt like a benediction. 8 lifetimes, and you still surprise me. Good. You've had 700 years to get bored. I need to keep things interesting. The laugh that escaped him was raw and genuine, probably the first in decades. They stood together as moonlight painted silver paths across the cathedral floor, and Alara felt destiny shift. Not the curse's predetermined path, but something they were forging together through impossible choices. When the council returned, Kane's voice rang with absolute authority. We accept the ritual. Alara will undergo the memory extraction, but I remain with her throughout. And if any of you harm her beyond what the ritual requires, I will remember my reign and why it ended entire bloodlines. Marana's eyes glittered. How deliciously dramatic. Very well. Prepare the altar. As other vampires arranged candles and drew symbols in ash, Alara whispered to Kane, No matter what I see, what I feel, don't let me go. His arm tightened around her. Not in this lifetime. Not in any other. The ritual circle glowed with eldritch light, and Alara stepped forward to meet her deaths. Chapter 7. Through Memory's Blade. The ritual circle pulsed with light, the color of dying stars. Alara knelt at its center, Kane beside her despite Marana's protest. The crone stood opposite, her gnarled hands weaving patterns in the air that left after images, sigils that hurt to perceive directly. The memory extraction requires blood. The crone's voice echoed strangely, as if speaking from multiple timelines. 3 drops from the mortal, 3 from the vampire, mixed on consecrated stone while I speak the binding. Alara extended her wrist without hesitation. Kane produced a silver blade from his coat. Ornate, ancient, probably used for centuries of dark rituals. He paused before cutting, his eyes meeting hers in silent question. Last chance to flee. She nodded. The blade kissed her skin. 3 drops fell, impossibly red against white marble. Kane cut his own palm. His blood was darker, silver-threaded, not entirely liquid. 3 drops joined hers, and where they mixed, light erupted. The crone began chanting in a language that predated Latin, predated written words. The circle blazed, and Alara fell into memory. First death, Isadora. She was 8 again, but aware, trapped in a child's body, watching herself befriend the monster in the woods. She felt every emotion, the fearless curiosity, the joy of teaching him to laugh, the warmth of his rare smiles. Then, the poisoning. The toxin spreading like fire through her veins. She relived 3 days of agony, convulsions, fever dreams, organs shutting down one by one. She felt Kane's cold hands on her forehead, trying uselessly to ease the pain. In the end, darkness closing in, but clarity too. She made him promise, wait for me. I'll find you. The memory released her, gasping. Second death, Magdalene a nun's habit, rough against skin. Smuggling heretics through midnight tunnels. Discovery. The Inquisition's torches. Flames. Oh God, the flames. She burned alive, screaming prayers that turned to screams of pure animal terror. Her skin blistered, her lungs scorched. Through the smoke, she saw Cain's face in the crowd, frozen in helpless horror. Bound by daylight and silver chains the Inquisitors had prepared. She died trying to mouth his name. Third death, Vivian Artist's studio. Paint under her nails, 43 years with Cain, the longest incarnation. She remembered now, nights discussing philosophy, his patient stillness as she sketched him, the way he'd learned to touch her gently despite his strength. Then the rival artist. The blade in her back. Shock before pain. She fell among her canvases, blood mixing with paint, creating colors she'd never mixed on purpose. Cain arrived too late. She died in his arms, trying to tell him it wasn't his fault. Fourth death. Catherine Scholar, Prague, consumption. Slower than poison or violence, but just as cruel. She coughed blood into handkerchiefs, grew weaker over months. Cain read to her every night, his voice the only thing that made the pain bearable. She died mid-sentence, trying to explain a theorem he'd helped her discover. The last thing she felt was his tears on her cheek. Fifth death, Ophelia Coldwater. So cold. Her dress dragging her down into the river. She'd been pushed, a political rival, threatened by her influence. Cain dove after her, but the current was too strong, the water too dark. She drowned looking up at the distorted moonlight, thinking, not enough time. Never enough time. Sixth death, Serafina witch trial. She'd been healing villagers with herb lore, making the local priest's prayers look impotent by comparison. They bound her with iron and silver, preventing Cain's rescue, the pyre, again. Different century, same flames. But this time, she saw Cain break through at the last moment. Too late to save her, but in time to hear her whisper, "Keep waiting. I'll come back stronger." Seventh death, Isolde War. Artillery fire. She'd been tending wounded soldiers when the shell hit. Instant, at least. No prolonged suffering, just the flash, the roar, and then nothing. Cain found her body hours later, covered in ash and rubble. She'd been 26. The memories released her all at once. Alara collapsed forward, sobbing. Not from pain, but from the weight of it. 7 lifetimes of loving him. 7 promises kept. 7 failures that weren't failures at all, just mortality being mortal. Enough. Cain's voice cracked like breaking stone. He gathered her against his chest, defying the crone's command to remain separate. She's proven it. She's endured it. Stop this. The ritual is complete. The crone's eyes cleared from prophetic haze. The bloodline is confirmed. She is Isadora reborn, again and again, bound to you by oath and curse. The ancient vampire's expression softened infinitesimally. I see now why you've waited. This is no delusion, Lord Cain. This is a love that's rewritten fate 8 times. Marana rose from her throne, her cold beauty touched by something almost resembling respect. The council acknowledges the bond. The mortal has proven remarkable resilience. She inclined her head fractionally. You have our protection, healer. No house will touch you without answering to us. And Cain? Alara managed, her voice raw. You'll release him from your demands? His service? Marana glanced at the other council members, something unspoken passing between them. Will be voluntary. We extend the invitation, but do not command. Even we are not cruel enough to separate such devotion. It was as close to mercy as ancient vampires could offer. Theron looked annoyed but outvoted. The others simply watched with the detached fascination of creatures witnessing something they'd forgotten existed. True love, tested across centuries. The crone approached, moving with surprising gentleness. She placed a gnarled hand on Alara's head. Your 8th life carries a gift the others didn't, child. You remember now, all of it. The curse didn't account for cumulative memory surviving the ritual. Her smile was cryptic. Perhaps that's the key it's been waiting for, a mortal who chooses immortality with full knowledge of what she's survived to reach this moment. Understanding crashed through Alara like lightning. The curse wasn't just testing her choice. It was testing whether she'd choose with complete awareness, whether she'd embrace eternity, knowing exactly what she'd endured to get there. She looked up at Cain, seeing him through 8 lifetimes of perspective. The devoted friend, the desperate protector, the patient teacher, the grieving lover, the eternal guardian. "Take me home," she whispered. "We have a choice to make." The council released them with formal ceremony, but Alara barely registered it. She was too full of memory, too heavy with lifetimes of love and loss. Cain carried her from the cathedral, not because she couldn't walk, but because he needed to hold her, to confirm she'd survived what should have broken any mortal mind. They didn't speak during the journey back to the castle. Words felt insufficient, only when they reached her chamber. When he'd settled her gently on the bed and built up the fire to blazing, did he finally break the silence? "I'm sorry." His voice was destroyed. "I'm so sorry you had to remember all of it. Don't." She caught his hand. "Don't apologize for loving me enough to wait 700 years. But the pain was worth it." She said it with absolute conviction. Every death, every lifetime, every moment of love we stole from an unfair universe, worth it. Because it led here, to me, finally understanding what you've endured, what we've been fighting for. Cain knelt beside the bed, his composure finally shattering completely. "I don't deserve you. You've earned me 8 times over." She cupped his face, feeling the cool smoothness, the faint dampness of silver tears. "And now I get to choose with full knowledge, not because of destiny or curse, but because I remember loving you across centuries." "What are you saying?" She smiled despite her exhaustion, despite the weight of 8 lifetimes pressing against her consciousness. "I'm saying we finish this. Together. We break this curse by embracing it. By choosing what it always demanded, my immortality, freely given." Cain's breath caught. "Alara, I know the cost. I remember Catherine living 43 years with you. I want more than 43 years, Cain. I want centuries. I want to learn everything, see everything with you." She leaned forward. "I want to finally keep my promise. All of them." Outside, dawn threatened the horizon. But for the first time in 700 years, Cain allowed himself to hope. Chapter 8. The Choice. 3 days passed while Alara's mortal body recovered from the memory ritual. She slept fitfully, dreaming in 8 layers, sometimes herself, sometimes Isadora, sometimes all her previous incarnations speaking in chorus. Cain remained near, a constant guardian who watched her sleep with the patience of someone who'd perfected the art over centuries. When she finally woke fully, clarity had settled into her bones. She found him in the castle library, a chamber she hadn't explored before. Thousands of books lined the walls, collected across his immortal lifetime. He sat at a desk near the window, translating a medieval manuscript by lamplight, though dawn was only an hour away. "You should be resting," he said without looking up, his awareness of her always acute. "I've rested enough." Alara approached, studying the manuscript over his shoulder. Latin mixed with symbols she almost recognized from Catherine's memories. "Tell me about the transformation." "The truth, not the sanitized version." Cain set down his quill carefully. "You die, fully. Your heart stops, your lungs cease. I drain you to the absolute edge of mortality, until only a thread remains. Then you drink from me, deeply, willingly, and my blood rewrites your biology from the cellular level." He turned to face her. "It takes 3 days of death to complete. You'll feel everything, the body's panic, the struggle against change. Most who attempt transformation go mad from the sensation of dying while remaining conscious. But not all. No. The strong survive, those who want immortality more than they fear death." His expression was grave. "I've transformed only twice in my existence. One succeeded and became a trusted companion for 2 centuries before choosing final death. The other," he looked away, "went mad during the transition. I had to end their suffering. And you think I might fail? I think you've died 7 times already. Your soul may resist another death. even one leading to immortality. He stood, moving to the window where pre-dawn light turned the sky purple. In previous lifetimes, we were interrupted during the ritual. Perhaps the curse knew you weren't ready. Perhaps it protected you from a transformation you'd have rejected if given the choice. Alara considered this. The Catherine memories whispered agreement. She'd been ready then, willing, but the attack had come at the ritual's climax. A mercy or a cruelty? There's another factor, Cain continued quietly. If you transform, the curse may not break. It might simply trap us both in immortality, waiting for some other condition to fulfill. We could have eternity together and still be bound to this covenant with an entity we don't fully understand. Or, Alara said, moving to stand beside him, the curse breaks because I've finally done what Isadora promised, chosen you freely, with full knowledge, accepting death to find you again. It's a gamble. Love always is. He turned to her then, and she saw the war in his expression. Hope against fear, desire against duty. If you're certain, he said slowly, we do this properly. No interruptions. No council watching. Just us and a ritual as old as my bloodline. When? Tonight. At moonrise. It's symbolic. The moon witnesses transformations, governs tides and blood. His hand rose to cup her cheek, his touch reverent. Use today to be mortal one last time. Walk in sunlight. Eat favorite foods. Breathe deeply. Because after tonight, if you survive, those experiences will become memories. Will you be with me? Today, I mean. I've waited 700 years. I'm not wasting our last mortal day apart. His smile was soft, sad, hopeful. What would you like to do? They spent the day as if they were ordinary. Alara walked the castle grounds in afternoon sunlight, feeling warmth on her skin while Cain watched from shadowed doorways, unable to join but unwilling to be far. She picked wildflowers from the overgrown gardens, weaving them into a crown that would have made Isadora laugh. For lunch, Cain produced a feast, foods he remembered from his mortal life 4 centuries ago, prepared from recipes preserved in his library. He couldn't eat but watched her with quiet joy as she tasted bread and honey, roasted vegetables, wine that tasted of summer. You're memorizing me, she observed. I've memorized you 8 times. But yes, each version of you has different preferences, different gestures. I'm greedy for all of them. In the afternoon, they returned to the library. Cain read aloud from poetry collections. Byron, Keats, verses written by vampires who'd lived and loved and lost. Alara curled against his side, learning the comfort of his coldness, the stillness that was uniquely his. Tell me about your mortal life, she asked during a pause. You've never mentioned it. He was quiet for a long moment. I was a second son in a noble house, not important enough for power, too educated for simplicity. I studied medicine, philosophy, tried to help people. His voice grew distant. When plague came, I worked until I collapsed. A vampire found me dying in a mass grave. I'd been thrown there by mistake, still breathing among corpses. She offered transformation as a gift. I accepted because I thought immortality meant I could save more people. A bitter laugh. Instead, I became what people fear. The irony isn't lost on me. You still save people. You've saved me 8 times. I've also condemned you to 7 deaths. No, you've given me 8 chances to love you. She shifted to look at him directly. That's what you don't understand, Cain. Every lifetime, even ending in tragedy, was worth it because I knew you. Because you showed me that monsters are just people who've survived too long alone. His composure cracked. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her eyelids, reverent, desperate, grateful. If you survive tonight, he whispered against her hair, I will spend eternity proving worthy of this gift. You already have. Moonrise came too quickly, and not quickly enough. Cain led Alara to a chamber deep beneath the castle, a space carved from living rock, lit by hundreds of candles. Symbols covered the walls, drawn in silver and blood, protections and invocations in equal measure. At the center lay a stone altar, old as mountains, stained with centuries of ritual. Last chance, Cain said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. You can still choose mortal life. I'll protect you until natural death, then wait for the 9th incarnation. Ilara removed the flower crown, setting it on the altar. I've made my choice, 8 lifetimes ago and again today. She met his eyes without fear. Transform me. Make me yours. Let me finally keep my promise. He approached slowly, as if she were something holy and fragile. It will hurt. I know. You'll feel yourself dying. I'm not afraid. You should be. But he was already pulling her close, tilting her head to expose her throat. I am. His lips brushed her pulse point, feeling the steady rhythm of her mortal heart. When his fangs pierced skin, the sensation was cold lightning. Pain and pleasure tangled together. He drank. Ilara felt her life flowing out, felt her heart slowing, felt the world growing distant. But she also felt his presence, anchored, solid, refusing to let her drift completely into darkness. When he pulled back, his mouth was stained red, his eyes blazing with restrained hunger. Now drink from me, deeply. Don't stop until I tell you. He bit his own wrist, and dark blood welled up, silver-threaded and otherworldly. Ilara pressed her lips to the wound and drank. It tasted like winter midnight in ancient forests, like power and loneliness, like 700 years of waiting compressed into liquid form. She drank until the world exploded into sensation, every nerve firing, her body convulsing as vampire blood rewrote her biology. Cain held her through it, murmuring in languages she almost understood, keeping her conscious through the transformation. Stay with me, he commanded. Feel the change, but don't fight it. Let death come, but hold on to my voice. I've got you. I've always got you. Her heart stopped. Everything stopped. And in that moment of absolute stillness, suspended between mortality and immortality, Ilara felt the curse's presence, an entity ancient and curious, finally witnessing its conditions fulfilled. 8 times you have died. 8 times you have found him. This time, you die willingly, choosing immortality with full knowledge. The oath is satisfied. The curse is lifted. You are free. The presence withdrew and her heart beat again. Once, twice, stronger than mortal rhythm. Transformation seized her completely. 3 days and nights she spent in death sleep. Cain never left her side, watching over her transformation with the patience of centuries. He spoke to her constantly, memories of their lifetimes together, promises for their future, stories to keep her tethered to consciousness during the biological rewriting. On the 3rd night, Ilara opened her eyes. The world was different, sharper. She could hear Cain's unnecessary breathing, could smell the candle wax in ancient stone, could see individual dust motes floating in air currents invisible before. And she was cold. Beautifully, perfectly cold. Cain? Her voice was her own, but layered with new resonance. He was beside her instantly, his face transforming from worry to wonder. You survived. You're here. She sat up, testing her new body. Everything felt different. Stronger. More precise. Hungry in ways she didn't yet understand. The curse. It's gone. I felt it leave. I know. I felt it too. He laughed, the sound breaking with emotion. 700 years, and it's finally over. Ilara reached for him, and for the first time, when their hands met, they were equals. Same temperature, same immortality, same future stretching infinitely ahead. We're free, she whispered. We're free, he confirmed. And then he kissed her, the first kiss of their eternal life together, without the shadow of doom hanging over them. It tasted like victory and promise and love that had survived 8 lifetimes to finally reach completion. When they finally parted, Ilara smiled and felt her new fangs with her tongue. Now what? Now, Cain said, his expression lighter than she'd ever seen. We have eternity to figure that out together. Epilogue. 8 lives. 1 promise. 1 year later, Ilara stood in the castle garden at dawn, watching the sun rise, something she could do now, thanks to Cain's ancient bloodline conferring resistance to daylight. The gardens had been restored over the past year, reclaimed from wild overgrowth. Roses bloomed in impossible colors, and in the center, A memorial stone bore 8 names: Isadora, Magdalene, Vivian, Catherine, Ophelia, Seraphina, Isolde, Ilara. "You're up early," Cain said, joining her. His hand found hers naturally now. 700 years of hesitation finally released into easy affection. "I was remembering," Ilara said. "All of them, all of us. It's strange being all 8 women at once. Is it difficult, holding that many memories?" "No, it's like finally being complete." She leaned into him. "I understand now why the curse demanded full knowledge. It wasn't cruelty. It was ensuring I chose transformation for the right reasons. Not infatuation, not desperation, but genuine love built across lifetimes." Cain pressed a kiss to her temple. "The council has requested our presence again. Diplomatic matters in the East. Will we go? Only if you wish. We're not bound to anyone but each other now." Ilara considered. In the past year, they'd traveled, reconnected with the world, began building a life that was theirs rather than the curse's. She'd learned to control her new abilities, had even started teaching medicine again, this time to vampire younglings who needed to understand mortal physiology. "We'll go," she decided. "But on our terms, as equals, not servants, as partners. For eternity." They stood together as dawn painted the sky in shades of hope. Behind them, the castle that had been Cain's prison became a home. Ahead, immortality stretched, not as burden, but as gift. Ilara thought of Isadora, that brave 8-year-old who'd promised to find the monster in the woods across every lifetime. The promise had been kept, finally, completely. And now they had forever to discover what lay beyond curses and death. Together. Always together.